here. I love the food and pretty much everything else. The party yesterday was super cool. So the session today is, its title is Explore Drupal with RESTful, but the title that I wanted. The title that I wanted is Comprehensive Guide to Build an HTTP API Without Hating Yourself in 6 months after release. But you know, it's too long for the website, so I think the thing is that I've been writing APIs lately, and I haven't fun with it, which is important. But whenever you write an API, you have to be very careful and plan for reality, because you can be very dynamic, you can do everything as you're supposed to, but then reality comes and slaps at your face. So to do so, I started a project with Amitai, who's not here today. It's the RESTful module. The good thing about this is that it's Drupal 7, so you can use it today, not in a year or so. But there are plans to port it to Drupal 8, so yeah, whenever everything is super cool, because we're using Drupal 8, you will be able to use this too. Because it has something different to what the REST module in Drupal 8 will look like. So the important part here is that this module, this is the model of the module. We're trying to achieve practical RESTful following the best practices. The best practices part is pretty self-explanatory, and the practical part, it just means that we don't want to get a gold medal or to achieve the holy grail of RESTful. Being academic and following Roy Fielding's dissertation, it's certainly nice and it has a lot of valid points, but again, it has all the drawbacks, and you have to work with APIs in order to pinpoint them and discover those. So yeah, why this module? There are other modules like services, REST-WS, and a couple others. For me, it was simple. I mean, I have fun with this model, and it's called V8, which is well, those other are also for the 8. But someone approached me, as I said, Amitai, and sold me this idea, and I was totally on board. I remember that the thing that I liked the most was that he wanted to build an API that you couldn't tell that it was built with Drupal. And that's really something. So in Amsterdam, he talked a bit about this and put my picture in one of his slides, and he was very bold and also added some hearts to it. So here I'm returning the paper. He did the same thing. He was super fun with that. So I want to talk this through an example, and I'm calling this Voyage Concilier, and I apologize for my pronunciation. It's just a clone of TripAdvisor, because some bots realized that they are going to be immensely rich if they build a restaurant repository where people can put comments and ratings and everything. So you are asked to build this thing, or to think about how you're going to build it. And of course, you don't even think for a second you're going to build it with Drupal, because Drupal is the best thing that there is. And well, I don't have to sell you Drupal. And you decide to go decoupled. And by decoupled, I mean headless. Well, there's some debate in there of what the word should be. But when I say decoupled, I mean headless, more or less. So the first thing that you need to do is to write an API design document. Because when you're going decoupled, you need to write the contract between the backend and the front end. And by contract, I mean having a specification where the front-end team or the consumers can rely on what will be provided to them by the backend team or the producers. So basically what you are going to put in there are the specifications of the HTTP API. Because, it's an API, it's an interface between two parts. In this case, the backend and the frontend. So if you do that, then you allow your backend and frontend team to start working in parallel. Because once you have that contract, they can start writing React because they have the expectation. They know what they are going to have. They don't have to wait for the backend people to provide some JSON. They know what JSON is going to be there, what's the URLs that they need to ping, etc., etc. So while you are working on the backend, the frontend people can just do the same. And that is a good way to sell it to your manager if you want to go for fun for a decoupled design, because that will allow you to go for even tighter deadlines if you want to go for that. But anyways, another good thing that you will achieve is that you can swap out and in components very clearly. The idea here being, well, you can have an Android app that you use, some technology to build it, and you can just remove that and place another one, and everything works. And you only have to do the Android app. You don't have to tweak the backend. And it goes the other way around, of course. If you build this initially, you make your contract, you make your design, and you build this, let's say, with Symfony or Silex or whatever is the thing, Node.js, and then you realize, oh my god, I should move to Drupal. Then you just do the Drupal thing. When it's done, you shut down the Node.js and you put Drupal up, and everything works. You have zero downtime. So that's a huge benefit. That's a huge benefit because, as I said, in real world you're gonna have these things. You're gonna have to evolve your project and maybe do this kind of thing. I'm a backend developer, and to me it seems like the front-end people, they are switching frameworks like every day. So maybe one day it's Angular, the other day is React. I'm probably mistaken, but it's funny to me. So this allows these front-end guys to do things in those new frameworks without having to wait to maybe Google to catch up and include those into the code base. And finally, if you go this route, it will allow you to let other people do your work, because you can publish your API and let the community to build clients for it. Maybe for our restaurant side, someone will build an aggregator that will take information from different sites and put it in a single place. And that's what you want, right? Let other people do your work. So what's in this document? This document, you should have very simple information. This is not, it doesn't even have to be a document. It's just something that has the information and people can contribute to it, regardless of if there are backend people, front-end people, even non-technical people, managers, etc. So basically you have the resources, the URL, the payload, the input and the output that they accept, and that's mostly it. If you're doing REST, you call these resources, but sometimes you will have to do something else. Some monstrosities that are resource-ish, maybe remote procedure calls, or pinging a URL that sends emails, or something like that. So those should be documented as well. And finally, you need to put some generic guidelines on how to expand this document, because remember, you're going to get immensely rich with this idea, and you don't want to be involving this document. You are going to just explain how to do this for other people. So you're building this with Drupal, and the first thing that you want is to avoid Drupal to be leaking in your API design. And by that I mean that when you're writing your URLs, your first instinct may be to write, okay, if you ping node/1, you get this output. Well, that's not ideal from the point of view of that you want to be able to swap this out, right? You don't want your design to let everyone know that it was built with Drupal, because maybe you want to swap this out for Node.js app. And if you had your contract with a lot of Drupalisms, then you would have to build a Node.js app that fakes to be a Drupal app that exposes an API. And you don't want to be doing that. So resource field, resource URLs, field labels, and other definitions should be out, especially these field underscore tags of undefined or 0 that shouldn't be there. I mean, you pick a name, whatever the name is, and then you store the value there. And another thing that you want is versioning, because your API is gonna evolve, and maybe imagine this situation where you have the API ready, everything is in production, you have your super cool official app, but there are other contributed apps, maybe an Android and an iOS client. And all those are working fine, but then you realize that you want a new feature in your official client, which is going to be a blast, and it's going to blow everyone's mind, right? But to do that, you need to update the API. So this deadlock situation where you have to update your API, and you're going to break Android and iOS because you don't even have control on those code bases. And basically, you cannot update your API, but you want because you need this new feature. So what you need to do is just use versioning. The Android and iOS clients stay on version 1, and you support 1, and you create version 2, which will be driving your official client, and you will have the new feature in it. And in the future, if Android and iOS want to use the new feature, they can just upgrade, and everyone's happy, and there is no downtime. So yeah, not versioning your API is pretty much acknowledging that you will only have one single client, because there is no guarantee to do that. And even if you control all those other clients, it is very hard to coordinate release at the same time of your API and your clients, everything deployed with no problems. That doesn't sound realistic, right? So think about the RESTful module is that, for starters, it's developer-oriented. Drupal does this thing, which is super cool, of empowering non-technical users to do crazy websites. I mean, without even writing a single line of code, and it's amazing. But there are some things that I think that those non-technical users shouldn't be able to do. We tried in the past to have a UI to click through and do migrations, and that didn't work. Migrate to came and did everything in classes, in code, and that works very well. So this is the approach that we have taken. So that has the benefit of being 100% features module free, and this is super exciting. What you do is just write code, you commit it, and that's it. So what does this code look like? Oh my god, it's super red. So there are no hooks in here. You don't have to create your module and have a gigantic .module file that implements some rules and whatever. It's even simpler than that. Everything is logified. Everything is based on C++. And it may sound scary, maybe not, but this is what it looks like. It's just a definition record. Basically, you don't even have to read this. I mean, it's just a name, a label, a description. It's saying that this resource is for articles, so it's exposing articles and allowing you to create articles when you send data to this URL. And there is one special key which is called class that has a class name, and then you modify to implement that class, and you do something like this, implementing a method in that class, and that's it. You have your resource. In here, you'll see that you have your public field, which is what it will go into the API design, and it has no Drupal in it, and then you connect it to the Drupal field, and that's mostly it. And you can even go right here and do it simpler and create a view mode for your content type. And view modes. You select the fields that you want there and how to display them, and you just pass into this class the view mode. That's it. That's all the work that you need. For 90% of the time, this is what you're going to be doing. Just provide the property for an entity. But it goes way beyond that. I mean, for that 10%, well, that 10% is important. So it's what separates your design to be, your implementation to be a couple of hours, to be a lot of time. So you can pretty much do anything by implementing methods and classes and all of the stuff that is pretty documented in the project module, and yeah, you can do that. But yeah, this is what you're going to do, and when you have that, it will provide for you basic product. So what you ask to an HTTP API generator tool is to be able to list stuff, be able to sort that list of stuff, to maybe filter it, and then to create, update, and delete items, and read them too. So, to do that, you just use these these HTTP methods, which are head, get, post, put, batch, delete, and options. This is the basic stuff. This is what you can go with that. There are some features that you get for free with every RESTful installation that I think that are cool. You can not only sort and filter, but you can also list the fields that you want out. So imagine that you have your articles resource, right? You have some fields in your article resource, like the title, the body, tags, and related articles. But for this particular view that your front-end team is building, they just need the title, or the title and the tags, because that's what the design says. So you can just pass in this fields property, and it will list the fields. That's one of the benefits that you can do. Another thing that goes into this be realistic is this resource testing. Okay, so if you're a purist, you could say you wouldn't want to manage resources. You just have the article out, and the article has 2 tags, let's say. Tag number 4 and tag with ID 5. So what you do is you get the article, you then know that you have to ping the tags resource to get the number 4, and then to get the number 5. And that's not very performant. So if you want to be practical, you can do all these in a single call. And when you talk about 3 calls, maybe it's not very impressive, but when you go really nuts with your content type, and I know that you go nuts with your content type, it's going to get hard because it's going to have a lot of entity references and author fields and taxonomy terms, and all those relate to other entities. So what you can do is basically you can configure your resource to use the tax resource to embed the information inside it. So basically with a single call, you get your article and both of your tags. For creating and updating, you have also these nested resources. So basically you send a single payload to the server, and with a single call, you create that article and you create those 2 tags. So you're creating 3 entities with a single call. Finally, there's a guy here that maintains the entity validation module. Thank you for that. The RESTful module integrates with the entity validation module, which is kind of the same concept of the constraints in Symfony that are introduced in Drupal 8. Basically, since you cannot rely on a Drupal form to validate your data, you have to validate it somehow, because you don't want bad data in your site. So you can have these validations, and if those validations don't pass, an error will be coming back to your client, and you would be able to display, hey, your title is too short, or whatever. So this is an example. We have there a list of articles. Some are expanded, some not. But you see, there's the tags embed that I told you before. You have the self property that you can use to get more information if you need. But basically what you do is, I don't know if you can see that, but in the URL, I added this filter label lorem, which will filter out all the articles that don't have lorem in the title. And it will sort by ID and only display the ID and the tags. I need to add one example. Well, you can hear it. So, RESTful by default is version. And you have several ways to negotiate a version. You can ask for a specific version by putting it in the URL, which again is not very academic. If you want to go for the academic version, you can do it in the headers. So you can, while you are making the request, you can provide a header saying, I want the articles 1.3 version, right? And that's mostly it. For many situations, it's useful to have it in the URL, and that is why it's supported. You can have non-technical people click a link in your issue tracker and see if that is providing what they are expecting. So you don't have to explain them that they need to install this mod headers extension for Chrome and blah blah blah. It's just providing a URL. So it's a convenience. But the important part being that you have versioning in your API. Authentication provider. That goes in line with the question that started this conversation. The OAuth thing. We have one thing that are called authentication providers, and basically what that is a way to authenticate the user to know what every user can do. So in Drupal, we have cookie authentication. We go to the login form, and we just type in the user and password, and a cookie gets generated for the session, and that's what we use to authenticate. In RESTful, we are supporting out-of-the-box cookie authentication. We are also supporting basic authentication, and the OAuth specification of token bearer, that's also out of the box. There is no OAuth yet. I'm assuming that someone will pick that up. But the good thing here is that since everything is a plugin, you can write a custom module that creates a plugin, and there you go. You have your authentication provider that maybe allows you to integrate with LDAP, or maybe allows you to only log in users that provide the user and password and send me a cat picture. You could do pretty much anything that you need by creating one of these plugins in your custom module. Rate limits. This is a feature that I built in after GitHub was under a severe DDoS attack. So the idea behind this, this is maybe not the most important feature, but you get this for free. I mean, the idea being that you can limit users to access your API. You know, you give them your API, it's your data, and you are opening this to everyone, but you want to make sure that they don't bring your server down. So basically, by writing in that plugin definition that we saw earlier, that array that I told you, don't try to read it, in there you type rate limits and you specify a period of time, the number of hits that you're allowing in that period of time, and then the goal. So for instance, you can say something like, only allow 1,000 hits by anonymous users every day. That's the idea. But again, these are plugins. You can provide your own rate limit custom logic. And you could do something like, I'm going to provide a rate limit that increases during the day and decreases during the night. You just have to go with your custom module that implements one of these plugins, and then you go. It's available for all of your resources. So I've been talking about JSON all the time, but JSON is just an output format. You may want to use, God forbid, XML, or YAML, or binary, or whatever. So RESTful is in charge of getting your information and putting it in the format that you need. So by default, again, RESTful ships with JSON, HAL JSON, which is very interesting. And there is an example of how you would build XML support for it. So basically, you get the data and then you show it. That's the idea. Render cache. So there is a principle that says that with more flexibility and complexity, performance degrades. And under this idea is why we implemented this render cache. This is basically caching the output of every row or every item that you're listing. So if you're listing an articles endpoint that returns 30 articles, you're caching 30 items. So if you then get a list filtered by whatever, and you're listing 3 items, and those 3 items were already cached, then the output is going to be built way faster. And that's it. What you can do in this case is that you can configure every resource to be cached differently if you want. And this is an exception. The cache render backends are not plugins, but don't panic. Drupal 7.4 already by default has a nice way to handle these these cache backends. So basically, there's a class that you have to implement, and there are lots of modules that provide cache backends like Memcache, like Drupal database cache, etc. So every resource it can go to its own backend. Like for instance, your tags endpoint could be in Memcache, and then your articles could be in the database, if that is something that you need. This is my second favorite feature of RESTful. It's discoverable. You don't have to write documentations for it. Remember when we talked about documenting your API? Well, this is going to be automatic. So basically what you do is you make, well, you can read this. Basically what you do is you make an options call, which is just another HTTP method. You query whatever endpoint that you need. If you want information about a single article, what's the output of a single article, you just do an options call, and then you get information about, on the right, you see, there's information about the field. You cannot read this, but it says it's returning an ID. About this ID, the name of the field is ID. This is there's a description for it that says base ID for the entity. And then, apart from that, you get the schema of the data. It's a text field that is limited to 255 characters. All this useful information, and also there is, by default, information on how to build a form element for this. So, this will empower you to build, for instance, a client app that reads this form element property and builds a form element for it. So imagine that you have a component written in, let's say, Angular, for instance, that all that it has to know is, okay, this API was built with Drupal using the RESTful module. I know how to build a form with it. You don't even have to tell me what's the information of this particular endpoint, because I can figure it out by myself. And obviously, you can add the information that you need. So by default, you have basic information, name and description, schema information about the nature of the data, and a form element for building automatic form elements. But you can add whatever you need. Maybe you can add business things that you need that describe why you need the field or whatever. So you can provide some information when you're declaring your resource. You can provide information for this. And that makes this API very interoperable. What that means is that you just provide the information for other systems to talk together and build awesome digital experiences. But by far my favorite feature, or my favorite accomplishment of this module, is that it's heavily tested. There are a lot of test groups. So this will allow anyone to come, contribute, break things, and be certain that if they do something, they're not going to break it for everyone else. And that's pretty important because it gives you confidence to come and help us build this stuff. But even more interesting than testing is the fact that there are lots and lots of examples. There are more than 50 examples in the code base. So pretty much whatever you need is in there. The only thing that you have to do is find the right example. And if not, there's a lot of documentation. You don't have to print it out, you just have to go to the GitHub project and read through. There are a couple of nested pages, and documentation could be better organized, but at least that's about it. So basically, this is ready to be used. Actually, I'm using this in a couple of projects that we are building in Lalabak, and it's working great. And yeah, well, as my wife says, this is where all my free time goes. And I complain about not having free time. And I guess that's it. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a small question. I saw that Drupal 8 is already integrate REST module, and even there is REST UI module where you committed some batch. I'd like just to ask if there is correlation between RESTful module you maintain and the future REST core module of Drupal 8, if it's two projects which are similar, if after they will merge, we need to, we could find that your module is much more functional and probably better, gives more possibilities.
I was prepared for that question. So, the REST module in Drupal 8 is, it needs some work, definitely, and it does things. I like how it's built, and I think that for maybe 80% of the use cases, you won't need the RESTful module. There are other cases where the implementation that it has its own shortcomings, and then that is when you need to investigate other options. At this moment, and that's what I've been doing, I think we've seen each other in the sprint rooms. I've been with my laptop coding the version 2 of the RESTful module, which is more Drupal 8 friendly, and it tries to emulate a bit closer how the REST module is built in Drupal 8. So the idea being that in the future, the transition from the V7 to the V8 part can be, seamless, or even that you can provide RESTful as an added part to the REST module or an extension, so they can work together. So to answer your question, in summary, they relate to each other. I think that the RESTful module has other stuff that the REST in Drupal 8 doesn't have, but most of the time you won't need this stuff. Or for lots of sites, let's say, depending on the site that you're building, you won't need it. Does that make sense? He's asking me to put that. This. So I'm assuming that you have questions about this. All right. Nice. Well, do you have other questions?
Thanks. Actually, I agree with the hearts. It's a great module. Thanks for it. It's we are just in the process of switching over from after half a year of building our API and hating it. So I was wondering whether anyone is building the Angular app for the all automatic stuff to build the forms and stuff. Are you aware of anything or?
Oh, sorry. Do you want to?
I can ask later.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be me or future me when I got more free time, I guess. This is something that I want to do, but you only get as many free time as you have. But someone could step up and do it right now. I mean, there is something that I didn't tell you. When I was talking about the examples, it's not just code examples, but there are also functional examples. So you can query, articles and get different outputs depending on the example that you're using. And another thing that you can do is use the Angular example. So there is a super simple Angular app that integrates with RESTful inside of the Drupal RESTful project. So If you need an Angular example, it's there. If you need a React example, it's not there.
I'm a big fan of API, which is for documenting APIs. Do you think there will be a way of somehow generating the blueprint from the automatic documentation in
So, for those of you that are not familiar with API, it's basically a way of writing that document that I told you before. Using the blueprint syntax, which, by the way, is open source, and the parser as well, I think. API is a service that will, parse that special markdown into a website that is used as documentation for your API. So the question is, can we use this auto-discovery thingy to generate the blueprint that will be used in API? Because API provides other services like a proxy for your API and mocking calls and all that. So it would be cool. There is nothing like that, and at the moment, the format how we are returning this information is not, let's say that there is no standard, and we wrote our own thing. The plans, however, are to use a thing that is called Gazelle Services Description. I don't know if you ever used that. So if you generate that, then you're using a project that is already built, and there may be maybe there is some kind of translation between that standard format and the blueprint, which is also the standard format. But no, there's nothing right now.
One more question. I can yell. It's okay. Just version 2 roadmap and status and version 2. Your version 2? How is it?
Well, right now it's working with entities. So the question is about the version 2 of the RESTful one. So we just released the stable release for RESTful version 1 this week. But yeah, version 2 is functional if you are working with entities. One thing that I forgot to mention is that you don't have to work with entities. You can work with raw tables in your database. You can list pretty much, or not only list, but full crack with pretty much everything. So these discovery tools, what they are doing is creating a resource that instead of querying entities, are querying CTools plugins. And they are listing CTools plugins. And you could even create CTools plugins through an API. So there's a lot of flexibility that is not implemented yet in the version 2 of the module. Right now it only works with entities, which I think is, again, 90% of what you would be doing. Maybe you will be using the variables, or maybe you would be using the menus resources, but yeah, entities, it's what's supported so far.
So I was looking for the documentation for the token and whole thing, and I could not find it. Do you have any kind of example of doing that? Because basically right now the issue that I have is we have a platform built on several different Drupal installations, and they all interact using REST. And like we are using services module and we hate it, but it's the only one that actually nicely supports the OAuth 2 module. And this is why we need the OAuth, because like we have several different users, several different access levels. So like using the login and saving the cookie is not really a professional solution for that. And basically, like, this is a must-have not only for me, but for anyone that is actually building a public-facing API. And you know, like, I know I have been bugging a lot on the on the issue queue on GitHub. Like, I did a follow several bumps on that, but it's basically because like we need to have something like that, and I would love to help, but I don't understand the module enough for it. And like I tried to spend like a week trying to make it work out, and I said, oh, never mind. Let's go back to the services because it sucks, but it works.
Okay, I think there were 3 questions in there. So the first one is the token auth module. Sorry, the token auth module is a sub-module inside RESTful. So if you click through the GitHub interface to that particular sub-module, there should be some documentation, or there may be some documentation, but it's an extra module that you have to enable. Just like you need to enable the examples module, because you don't want that code base to be loaded by default if you don't need it.
Yeah, basically, the last time I tried the module was over 6 months ago, and I guess there wasn't the module by then.
Oh, that may be. So the other question, I think that is cool, super cool, actually, that you bump issues up. I'm super interested that the people that are involved in that issue get pings sometime. So maybe they find time to implement that. And I forgot what the first video was.
Yeah, basically, how do you handle like having several different? Basically, I can take a look on the module and see how you're doing with the token auth. Basically, the question was how to handle several different services interacting with each other.
So what you would do in this case, if you would use one of the other authentication provider ways, like for instance, basic auth in an encrypted connection, to ping a resource, and that resource will give you a token. And you can use that token to identify yourself. That token expires, and you also, when you get your token, you get a refresh token. So when your token expires, with the refresh token and another specific endpoint, you can refresh your token again. Or you can just, use again the basic auth to get this token. I don't think that services sucks. I think that I know that you didn't mean any harm, but those projects are really amazing. I mean, services have been there like forever, right? And they saw the need before we started talking about headless. And in some sense, they are kind of a bit outdated, but as you pointed out, you can do a lot of stuff with that. So yeah, I wanted to use
Sure. I
as
didn't
an
want
excuse
to.
to give it a shout out.
I didn't want to offend anyone related with the project.
know
Like
that
I
you
even
mean.
sent patches to it. The problem is just the architecture that it was built. It's really outdated. Like it was something that was probably thought about 5 years ago, many years ago. But it's that there are easier and prettier ways to do the things in Drupal right now, and that is my main issue with it. But it works, and that is awesome. Like I have been relying.
Yeah, I know, and I apologize. I used your comment because this is something that I get sometimes. I mean, why didn't you just try to fix services or got involved to evolve REST AWS? And well, I think those are great projects, but I don't see those as my projects like I do with it, and I have no fun with it. Anyway. Opposite? I think that, well, it would depend on what download and what are the, the specifics of the requirements in there. But you could use either the HTTP interface to cycle through and get all the, for instance, articles and download the JSON documents. Another thing that you can do is you can do pretty much everything that you can do through HTTP, but do it from within Drupal. So basically, when you're making an HTTP request, you're just hitting a URL and then process starts. But you can manually, from within Drupal, start that process and get the JSON. And so, depending on how you want to do that, you can do it from within Drupal, and basically you could write a dash command or whatever to, get the data. Yeah, exactly. And generate JSON and save it to whatever is that you are saving that. Is anyone hungry? Yeah.
I will, yeah.
Late anyway.
Just last question, maybe the last two questions. Okay, the last question.
So, is there any possibility to filter multi-bundle resources? Because maybe we did something wrong, but maybe it doesn't work.
You didn't do anything wrong. It doesn't work. It will work in 2.x. And the reason for that is that at some point, it is not very obvious, but it gets tangled to know which resource you're dealing at every moment. So historically, we decided to just give support for a bundle in a resource. There is an example that mashes together a couple of bundles, but that is not giving you full control in customization, as you may know. And yeah.
For example, filter for authors.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Anyways, thank you. I
Step.
had a lot of fun. And please, if you have feature requests or comments or whatever, I'm going to be around, so follow me and you can talk.